Hello, hello, hello. We are here. I am Richard from Double Hands. I'm sorry I couldn't be here last week. I'm sure Brooke had you tided over well in their presence. I'm here with a mysterious administrator, label head of Connection Verified, which is one of my favorite labels, just full stop, frankly, but definitely my favorite Melbourne-based label. How you doing?
I'm good. It's my first time in Brisbane, so it's nice to see another city and kind of experience another scene. I've got a lot of friends up here and they've spoken pretty highly about what's going on. There are obviously a lot of really cool things happening up here, including yourself and your release that's just come out on Thursday, was it? I think. Connection Verified, actually. Yeah, Connection Verified Unreleased. Yes, that's the name of the sub-label. So yeah, it's really good to be up here and just meeting new people like you two and getting amongst it. Yeah, it's nice.
That's me. I'm here too. Hello.
We'll get to you. It's lovely to have you. Thank you for coming up. We really appreciate it. On that topic, actually, tell me about CVU. So Connection Verified Unreleased, I guess. It's, for those who aren't familiar, it's something that started relatively recently, and it's a slightly different direction from the first part of your label's catalogue, I would suggest. Could you give me some insight?
Yeah, so I suppose kind of running in the same vein as what a lot of other smarter crews did during the pandemic was try and kind of come up with a new idea or something that would kind of, I suppose, fill that kind of void that we all kind of experienced during the pandemic and during lockdown, which was obviously pretty hard for lots of Melbourneites and everyone in Australia. Really, it's been a tough time, obviously. CVR, the kind of like main, I suppose, like recording arm of the sort of CV label, had a pretty predominant focus on trying to bring a lot of international music out, like trying to unearth a lot of really, super, overused term, but underground artists, people that others had never heard of, really. People from the weirdest corners of the earth. We had someone from like Siberia in Russia, Georgia, Turkey, the US, all over Europe. And the CVU series was kind of trying to, I suppose, focus more on Australia, but just make something that's a series that's really kind of approachable to the public, because a lot of our vinyl releases were vinyl only. We needed something that was free and accessible. So CVU is basically just a way for more underground Aussie artists to put out music, but also it's free to download off SoundCloud. It's really accessible for everyone. So it's kind of just trying to give people an opportunity, and it's already borne fruit in a lot of really cool ways, and has made a really surprisingly substantial impact in terms of exposure and kind of getting out there. And like, it's been some artists' first release, which is just like, it's a really invigorating, awesome feeling to be doing that as a label. So it's really good to have you on board. It's really good to have all of these like smaller kind of underground Australian artists doing their thing on that sort of sub-arm of the label, I suppose. Yeah.
I'm really excited to be part of it, actually. I really like a lot of the artists you mentioned who you brought on recently. So people like Connor Wall, Sarana, I think they pronounce it, who was formerly Lucky P, I think. Yeah. I haven't had a chance to meet either of them personally, but like hopefully I will soon. And I talked to them online, and they're just lovely people. You've surrounded yourself and your community with just some of the most genuine people I think I've ever met. And frankly, that's what I love so much about it. Like, the music is also great, but that's a bonus. I can't think of many like little happy communities where it's more about the music first and foremost, and it's about like helping each other out. Essentially, it's on the way. Kind of on that vein, you also are part of a company that throws parties in Melbourne called INSTASIS. INSTASIS? Yeah, we'll figure it out, that one. What's so great about this is you can't move, so you can't like physically interact. Yeah, it's great, I enjoy it. Tell me more about what you guys do, essentially, the founding of that, perhaps.
Yeah, so INSTASIS was kind of a weird circumstance that kind of led to us starting it, because basically what happened was I've been living in Melbourne for about 4.5 years now. Was living up in Sydney before that. I went to one of my last weekends up in Sydney, went to gig which was Cleric and Satoic Mass up in Sydney. Two incredible artists, but booked and promoted really poorly. There was about 5 people, and 4 of those people were my mates. Anyway, the promoter, he ran a little company called Pine Tree Forest, I think it was called, or maybe it was Lady Grey's Sunday Best, one of the two. Oliver Meyer, he was the promoter up there, and we sort of like bumped into him because there was not many people on the dance floor. It was pretty easy to see who was there. Bumped into him and then, chatted the shit, whatever. Flew down to Melbourne, and then one of my first weekends out at the Mercat, I bumped into him again. He was like, oh, hey man, I saw you up in Sydney. You're living down here now. Let's hang out. Let's kind of talk. A little bit done with this current collective. I kind of want to start something else. And I was like, moved down there, saw how active the scene was and how active everyone was in the scene down there. And was just really, really into it. Met up with him and another good friend, Jude, and kind of talked through it. Got somewhat of an idea going just to host, like, same sort of thing really, like cool local artists, good sound, good clubs, that type of thing. We sort of teamed up with the other two, Holly and Kai, a little bit later, but they helped kind of direct the more visual side of things because we wanted a really strong aesthetic to kind of represent that as well, something really robust. So we've been trying to pursue that as well. And then since then, we've thrown a bunch of really good parties, hosted a bunch of really nice internationals like Blue Hour and Cast. Again, awesome, really just friendly, nice artists, incredible producers and DJs. So that's been awesome. And then it's kind of just grown in terms of, podcast capacity, and we've got a really good website now and got a few more parties coming up. So that's kind of good to, I suppose, CV is the kind of production side of things, and then there's another outlet for that kind of creative energy in terms of events and that kind of thing. So I don't know. I just really like surrounding myself with this type of stuff, to be honest. It's kind of just my daily bread, if I'm being honest. It's kind of what I live for. So it's really good to have projects that I can have influence on and then, help others out and that type of thing. Yeah.
You've helped me out already by pointing out that it's pronounced cast, I think. I've always said cast-st, because there's a colon in it. I don't know how to do it, that's great. I really do that. Thank you. I guess, so there's two sides to your persona. There's the event planning, organization part, which frankly I adore. It sounds like you're doing a lot of this to help a lot of people, frankly, and throw cool gigs, which is fantastic, right? There's also your musical part, essentially. Can you walk me through maybe your earliest productions? When did you start be like, yes, I want to make music now? Obviously, what was your thought process?
It goes back a long kind of time because my parents, and more specifically my dad's, always been a really, really musical person. He's been in bands since he was, in his 20s, and he's just about to turn 70 now. So, music was always a really big part of our family's lives. We'd always be at home listening to everything from Frank Zappa to Dave Brubeck Quartet, weird, I don't know, funk, pop, kind of everything in between. There was just always, cool music playing in our house, I suppose, and I don't know, new sounds happening. I kind of even one of my kind of earliest memories of music was wanting to kind of, get amongst it, and that led to sort of percussion and that sort of deep kind of rhythmic, I suppose, thing that I've always kind of had in my life. I feel the kind of percussion, drum stuff, when applied to production's been, really, really kind of fundamental in how I approach music, because it's always just got to have that kind of that groove and that sort of I don't know, rhythmic, percussive capacity, I suppose. But then kind of time went on, stopped doing drums, started listening to electronic music, kind of really got into it, and then ended up kind of just spending a lot of time trying to produce some music. Early on, it was really friggin' weird stuff, really, really bad ambient techno through to trashy electro, all this stuff. I had some interest from a few people. It's kind of a funny story. My first getting a few connections up in Sydney was actually sending some demos to Mikey, Jensen Interceptor, for his label International Chrome. Before that was actually a label. This was when I was like 18, so it was like, yeah, literally like 8 eons ago now. It was such a weird kind of time. That eventually fell through just for whatever reasons, but like that kind of, I suppose, start the fire in that sort of sense. And then, I don't know, I've always just been really, really keen to keep producing, keep going, like try and develop my skills, try and figure out how to make my productions as best they can be. I've been fortunate recently to have kind of like struck a bit of a chord with how I want to approach production, how I want to make tracks, how I want to like, which labels I want to try and find and put out with, kind of on a similar wavelength to CV, really, just like cool, smaller labels that have a really core focus on music above anything else. So yeah, it's been good. It's been really good honing that kind of skill and sort of developing it over time, because it is like an endless rabbit hole, and it's kind of good to not necessarily have reached the end of the rabbit hole, but at least somewhere where you can kind of come to parity and, you know, see out the other side, I suppose. Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, so I guess when you sit down, right, as you pointed out, are you going, all right, I'm going to sit down and write a track for a label? Or what's the main motivation behind when you sit down, what do you write, basically? Is it something that comes to you? Is it, like, are you an emotional songwriter in the sense that, like, I'm feeling happy, I'm going to write a happy track. Feeling sad, I'm going to write a sad track. There's something I asked Chris a couple of weeks ago. It was very interesting, his response. I wouldn't mind getting yours too. Or is it more just, no, I have to make something that will fit on this label sound, and then you do that?
For me, throughout the whole time, it's never been about writing for a specific purpose, just because of the way that I kind of operate in that capacity, I suppose. It's always just been, honestly, like, going into, you know, my soft synths, or going into Ableton, or like writing a drum loop, or like, I don't know, tweaking out some hats, or like designing a kick, whatever. It's always basically just been either jamming, one could say, or just like screwing around in another way. It's just like figuring out how to like, yeah, tweak sounds and make something sound cool, or it doesn't sound cool, so you scrap it and put it in the bin, whatever else. Yeah, it's never been writing with purpose. It's always been kind of like jamming, and the music that I make, it's never really with any sort of specific intent, hence why a lot of my tracks sound really goddamn whack, if I'm being quite honest. Like, I'll play some stuff later that's just like really quite strange. But that's kind of like I suppose one of the production motifs of the administrative project is basically just like wonk, just really weird sounds that sound cool and are groovy and are danceable. And a lot of it, yeah, just comes from jamming. Like, honestly, just like punching a pattern into a synth and then tweaking it until something cool comes out. That's basically been the whole thing. And then, I don't know, my productions otherwise are pretty like flash in the pan in terms of like, once I've got a good synth sound, I'll be able to write a drum loop in like 15, 20 minutes, process it, you know, arrange. I always write in arrangement view in Ableton instead of live view, just so I can actually build out a track instead of just writing a loop. And then, you know, kick, bass line, percussion, synth, you basically got your track. Throw in something else weird, some other like pad, or like a delayed stab or something. It's all just jamming. It's all just fucking around trying to get sounds. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
I am completely the same way with songwriting. Like, I would suggest not many people are, though. Like, my interview experience talking to people and stuff like this is most people have some kind of formal music background, or at least like have been taught basic music theory, know what chords sound good with what, so on, how to approach songwriting from a traditional point of view, kind of thing. Is this something you did, or did you pick this up completely by yourself, basically? Like, did you go through high school music, the progression, or was it just experimenting mostly?
You could probably say I learnt a little bit about the theory side of things in drums that I learnt at primary school and high school, but anyone that says that you can learn like I don't know, notation and like arrangement and, you know, tuning and all that sort of stuff through drums is completely wrong, because it's just like hit the thing with the stick. There's no like, you'll have it in like notation view or whatever it's called, but it's basically just like snare hat, tom, snare hat. Like, it's not as snare hat, drum, snare hat, snare, which is basically also a techno track. Funnily enough, a lot of all that I do in this area has been self-taught, and honestly just making a whole bunch of mistakes, producing a whole bunch of really garbage tracks, and then figuring out what worked and what didn't, or maybe like, I don't know, copy pasting some drums over from another track, or like, I don't know, coming back to something a little bit later and thinking maybe I could work with this, maybe I can't. The music theory side of things, like I still don't know how to, arrange a chord or whatever. Like I basically just plug it in, and then hope for the best. I don't know, tune it in the most abstract way, like literally with like the fine tuning on a synth, or like a way that you're not supposed to do these things basically. I love that. But yeah, again, it's all kind of like experimentation and just trying to find out what works and what doesn't really.
I'm guessing what works is your current project, Administrator, essentially. I'm going to hand over to Brooke, actually, if that's okay, to maybe talk about that, the name and the project. Okay.
Good day. I said this when we interviewed Chris, and I'll say this for you now as well, just to sort of get it out of the air. If I'm really good at this, it's because I worked at BuzzFeed, so, keep your expectations high as they should be. My sort of bit in all of this interview series has been ribbing on our artists for their names. So, of course, the Olympic Pool Maintenance League, world's longest name, doesn't fit on the poster, awful for graphic designers. This fucking abomination over here, 88756, it's like a monkey slapped a keyboard. So if you could tell me a little bit about Administrator, which is arguably the most convenient name out of all three, but is, however, hard to spell every time because I always forget where the A's and the O's and the E's go, and also all caps thing's fun. So tell me a little bit about that.
Like the whole kind of the original thought behind that was purely that I was the administrator of the label and of INSTASIS as well. Like that was just my role. But then I also, like over time, figured out that it was kind of perfect because it is supremely neutral, right? It's extremely flat. It almost doesn't make any impact at all, and that's kind of the purpose. It's not. The whole project is kind of designed around anonymity and trying to, like, as stupid as this might sound, trying to strip away the kind of ego from artistic practice. Impossible to do so because ego and creative practice are intertwined. They are inherent to each other. You can't remove them, but I basically want to take away any sort of, like, I just hate the marketing stuff. I hate all of the crap that's like surrounding techno and electronic music these days, because it's just become such a farce and so not about the merit of the music, purely about how many followers you can get, how many mates you can get to sell tickets, all of these like vain kind of things. Administrator over time has come to kind of represent, again, it'll sound dumb, a little bit of kind of resistance to all of that sort of stuff, because I just want it to be purely my music. That's it. That's all you get. You don't get my face, you don't get my name, you don't get anything. You just get this flat, neutral representation of something. No marketing, no whatever the hell. It's just like my music, period. That's all I want people to hear. That's all I want people to know me for. Obviously, people are going to have to meet me at gigs. People are going to have to, find out who I am eventually and my name and all that sort of stuff, which is kind of like fine, but as long as the wider kind of out there-ness of people doesn't find out, then that's kind of fine. The project also is kind of just like a combination of the anonymity thing and also just like a representation of the fact that my existence in that kind of area is all digital. Like I've basically never owned hardware. It's always been in the box for me. Like all of my kind of like mixes and all that sort of stuff exist on the internet. Essentially my entire artistry is just the digital entity in a sense. Like I've got a physical part of me obviously, but then the rest of it is just out there in either cyberspace or in Ableton, bouncing music out, whatever it is. It's all this weird kind of digital process. So I suppose it's like anonymity and digitalness kind of wrapped into one, basically. I hope that's better than Olympic Pool Maintenance League.
With that answer, I can see why you get on with Richard now, because he has said so many things to those things to me before, and I'm like, that makes sense. And you're doing great. I still haven't asked what your name is, and you were in my house this morning. I don't want to know at this point. One of the things that I've mentioned as well each time we've done these is that I do not come from a musical background whatsoever. I don't know fuck about shit about what any of this means. Flanger, actually, I'm going to ask that. Do you know what a flanger is? Okay, because Chris and Richard couldn't tell me. What's a flanger?
A flanger is an audio effect that basically like bounces the lows. I'm going to explain this really poorly, but bounces the kind of like lows and the highs against each other. I'm going to try and do this. So it creates this like kind of warping. Yes, please. Kind of like warping and like spinning effect. It's probably not the nitty gritty of it, but like a flanger was like a really, really early technique for like guitar pedals and music in the 70s. It gave that really like kind of like wah wah feel. What's that musical thing? Like not what's it called? Not tremolo, but something like that. It's like an exaggerated tremolo kind of thing. But it sounds tacky as shit. It's really bad, but I still use flanger, and I use chorus, which is like a light flanger in a sense. Don't crucify me for that, people listening that are into music. To just give it like a bit of like a height and a sort of like it kind of just like spaces out sounds, so I can give this really kind of like wee wah kind of effect. That's a flanger for you.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting as well. Of the three people we've talked to, you seem like you've got the most musical background, which is very interesting to me. I know, wow. I played the flute for 5 years and never got any better. That's what I've got. So I asked the dumb questions here because I don't fucking know what's going on. I have a question, and this is a genuine question because I'm not really sure how it works. What does a label do? What do you do as a label? Like when you go, I want to start a label, what, why? What is that process? What do you actually do?
I'll go into the what first before going into the why. The what, a label is essentially like a curation of musical artists captured by releases, most prominently, either physical or digital. It's like a label will curate a certain amount of tracks, be it like an EP, an LP, an album, and represent those tracks with artwork, with a write-up perhaps, with some information, with some like things like metadata and all that sort of like boring stuff as well. A label is essentially like just a curation of music, and then you capture all of that music in certain points of time with releases, basically. Digital or physical in things like vinyl. We've done 6 vinyl releases. USBs. We did a really cool printed USB by my friend Fergus Sweetland recently. He runs Bombcast down in Melbourne. Represent. Wearing the shirt. You might not be able to see it, but represent anyway. It's like, I don't know. Imagine like it's like an online gallery. It's for visual art, but it's auditory art captured in releases. The why is because I personally love music, and I want to share music with people, and I want to have an outlet for others to basically showcase themselves and their sounds, as well as myself. Obviously, I've self-released quite a bit of music, and I've got some really cool stuff coming up in that area as well. The why is just like, it's a good way of expressing it, basically. That's what it comes down to. It's a good way to like, have an output for that sort of stuff.
That's very interesting. I feel like I've learned a lot of things today. I could ask what EP and LP stand for, but I'm not going to. Okay.
I think it's extended play and long play, I believe is the two, which is funny because EP sounds longer than LP, but it's not. An EP would be 4 tracks, an LP would be 8 or more, and then probably 4 to 8, and then an album would be 8+, generally speaking.
Extended and long both mean the same thing. Who named this? What a garbage medium.
Smelly hippies named that in the 70s. Maybe the 60s? I don't know. Music history. Bad. Lost on me. Sorry.
I trust all of those things. I'll ask one more thing, and then Richard is standing over here. Oh, he's moved away. Oh, wow. What does this man want? Who knows? One of the other things I also like to ask our guests is, what is your process for naming stuff that you make? Like, this here is yours, I'm assuming. No. What's yours?
I can show you some of my track names. So I've got... They're all really just like fucking weird little extracts of data, or like something weird and digital. Like one of them is called Voice Activated Internet Protocol, VoIP. Trans.js controller, because the inspiration for that track was a Russian artist, and then I typed Russian into Google Translate, which happens to be a JavaScript controller. So it was translate JavaScript controller summarized into one. This track's called VK Split 101 because the synth I used is called a VKS Viking, and then I split that sound out into two, and I also used an SH101 emulator. Weird little like bits of just information captured in the process, all designed to be, again, quite neutral and almost meaningless to everyone else. But it's cool to me, and they mean something to me. Yeah.
I'm gonna hit you with a really important question now. What's your favorite kind of cheese?
Funny you asked that, because if my partner Emma is watching, I've recently, we've both recently actually, we were vegan for 2 years, and vegan cheeses have come a long way. I'm sure Emma will testify to that, but recently have fallen off that bandwagon due to intense cravings for meat and other forms of animal product. Sorry. But before that, my favorite cheese was either like a really, really heavy blue or an incredibly sharp cheddar. Something that's like 36, 48 months matured, and it's just sharp as shit, basically.
So they could start maturing it back when you became vegan, and now you could be eating it now that you're not vegan.
Where were you like 4 years ago? Oh my god, I need that. Be like so crispy right now. You started 2 years before I went vegan, and then I eat it now, and it'd be so sharp. Yummy.
What percentage of your time is spent producing music versus playing music live versus doing label things?
I work pretty constantly at everything. I'm also doing my Masters of Teaching at the moment. And I work 3 jobs in digital marketing. So I'm a bit of a busy bee, but like will work quite incessantly. I'm sure obnoxiously to basically anyone else on all of these things, like whether it's just jumping onto Ableton to make some tracks for an hour, then going to, queue up the next release for the label, and then like sorting some party stuff. My day is kind of never really the same, but always pretty hectic. Even if I'm like sitting on the couch, I'll still have a million things to do and still do all of them. Percentage-wise, I probably couldn't give you a number. Uni's been pretty dominant this semester just because my placement for uni got delayed because of COVID, so I had to do that, and then obviously all my assessments and all that sort of stuff as well, and then 3 jobs is never light, but then I don't know, like it's probably a 50-50 split between uni and work, and then music stuff, to be honest, maybe 60-40, maybe. That's probably the best answer I can give, unfortunately.
You are very busy. I do like 2 things, and I'm like, this is too many things. But thank you. Haha, I planned that all along. I'm going to hand back over to Richard now to ask some interesting questions.
I kind of want to touch on a bunch of stuff you said, frankly, but I guess first and foremost, do you have any opinions on the techno scene, first globally and then also in Australia in comparison? And what do you think is basically going to happen in the future in these areas?
I have a lot to say about the global techno scene and Australia's techno scene and Melbourne's techno scene. It's really good to see, trying to be a bit more kind of optimistic, because the pessimist in me is very, very like keen to jump out here. But it's good to see globally that a lot of people are kind of trying to return to something that is a little bit more kind of humble in the way that they approach music. It's like there's just been such a rise in literally business techno, to the point where, I don't know, there'll be these insane conspiracies that you hear about people like Solomon and Nina Kravitz getting paid to play other people's tracks, but then when they get their tracks played, these artists, they get massive as well. There's just all of this like money going around. There's all of these names that you see that no longer represent music. They represent it's almost like a celebrity type of thing, and I can't help but feel like that strips again the merit away from the music. That's just like the foundation of my entire philosophy behind any form of music. Is it should be about the music's merit. It should be about your art, your artistic merit, and your kind of creative process and those types of things. Everything else comes secondary to that. Everything else. So it's kind of nice to see, a lot of crews globally that are getting really, really big just because they make good music, and they don't need to be super friggin' loud. They don't need to sell 1 billion records. They just make music because people like listening to music, and that's, I suppose, it. Australia, I feel, it has a bit of unmet potential, I think, because, I don't know, some of our best exports have basically just come from Australia and then moved to Berlin, for example, and stayed there and become essentially quote-unquote German artists. Some would argue that Berlin is very, very un-German, especially in recent months, because it seems like every friggin' man and his dog just goes there and, does ungodly things and then becomes a little bit famous and then, go from there. I feel like if we just kind of focused our energy on maintaining the scene that we have here and funneling all our energy into that, we could meet that potential, that unmet potential. But having said that, there's still a lot of really cool crews doing amazing things. I think Melbourne especially is doing some of the most hopeful and amazing things in the Australian kind of techno scene. There's just really passionate crews. There's good clubs. There's people behind those clubs, planning and trying to get good sound in there and making sure that the event is as sick as it can possibly be. I think that's really great to see, and it's kind of cool to be in that melting pot of people, I suppose, with both projects. It's kind of really good interacting with all those people, and I really do love that city and all the people in it. So shout outs to Melbourne techno heads. Keep doing what you're doing. I'll be here, you'll be here, we'll have fun. Fuck business techno.
Fuck business techno. You don't have to if you're not comfortable with it and everything, but say I was someone hearing your interview for the first time, curious who I should check out in the Australian techno, who I should support, etc. Are there any groups or collectors or anything you stand out to you as being particularly friendly or inviting or good?
Bombcast Audio, primarily. Connection Verified and Connection Verified Recordings, definitely. We always have open arms and open ears. Send us an email, send us a message. Who else? I can only really name the people that I've interacted with, to be honest. That's my experience in a sense. That's kind of what I like doing. A lot of really cool park party crews. The Static guys are doing a lot of really great things. Shout outs to IWTFA, who are both here and in Brisbane, in Melbourne as well. They're cool people, cool crew. Shout outs to Sub Club, just because they've been a really, really strong kind of stalwart in our scene, something that's just driven the scene a lot over the past couple of years. Who else? Mine's kind of drawn a blank on that one, hasn't it? All Sorts Boys, who Connection Verified ran a night with last night. They're a really passionate crew with some just brilliant up and comers. That'll be amazing to watch their kind of journey, watch them get big. Who else? Shout outs to the Australian Connection Verified art roster. Yeah, that's me.
Thanks very much. So I guess I gotta stop saying along that line, but honestly along that line, I cold called you with an email basically about Connection Verified, saying hey, I think these tracks might fit in your label, I love what you do, blah blah blah, and you responded pretty much instantly and you were happy and so on and so forth. This is something that in my experience I've only really found in techno and techno underground communities, since it's way less about popularity, more about music. Is this something you've actively tried to foster, or is it just you're just a busy bee who responds to anything anyway?
I will respond to anything regardless of what it is, even if it's complete tripe. just because I think that's what professionals do, even if it's bad. Say what? No. I feel like, again, kind of tying back into, like, I don't know, the global and, like, sort of interstate scene, honesty goes a long way. So if you say, hey man, these tracks don't fit, here's why, I think that's a lot better than going, yeah, we might release it or we might not, I don't know, we'll let you know. I don't like doing that, but yeah, again, like, I think it comes down to, like, a very kind of, like, passionate approach to doing what you're doing. And, like, when I see new demos, I listen to them instantly, and if it fits, I'll try and make it happen as soon as I can. That's just my approach. That's how I operate. Gmail notifications, everyone, shout outs to Gmail for popping up on my phone every time I actually get an email so I can see it and respond to it. Why did I shout out Google? They don't need it. Yeah, fuck Google. Love your search engine, hate everything else. Anyway, on to you, Richard.
I love this interview. This is my favorite interview. Don't tell the other interviews that. I want to ask about, first off, someone else at SM56 this question last week. I think it's a good question. Has there been, like, a favorite live gig you've ever been to or played at that stands out in memory for how well it was run / the artist and the whole experience?
Standout shows. There have been quite a lot over the years, but, like, a lot of them have been as like a punter, kind of just like tourist, whatever. Like, I've had a lot of really kind of incredible experiences in really weird parts of the globe. Like, one of the best gigs I've ever been to was in this random as fuck club in Romania, in Bucharest, listening to some just insane Romanian minimal on this, like, I think it was like it was a 4-point function 1, but it was the cleanest, best sound I have ever heard in the entire world, and that's weighing it up against things like Rainbow Serpent Festival, for example. Market Stage there, another shout out to that because that's been incredible. Like, in terms of stuff that's been run kind of on home soil, it's been a lot of mates' crews again as well. There have been a few crews in the past that have put on really good stuff that have kind of fallen from grace, in my opinion. I won't name names, but like, even just the INSTASIS show that we ran after COVID, the energy there was just, like, insane. Like, it was just this wave of kind of, like, emotion and kind of, like, power, and it was just incredible to be around. Same as just, like, a really well curated show by good local artists, good local crews. Yeah. What else can I say? It's been really awesome partying over in Leipzig. Shout outs to all the crew there, because CV used to be half based there for a good couple of years. A lot of really, really cool crews there, like insane club experiences run by really nice people. One of the best things I've ever done with my entire life was I went over and did 6 weeks in Eastern Europe by myself, and then ended up in Germany, played 3 shows in Leipzig, one of which was at a club called Institut für Zukunft, Institute for the Future, basically. This insane, like, not Soviet era, but like 1980s era giant meat refrigerator. So it was like a 20 meter tall, like, tiled cube that's just, like, mind-blowingly good. Like, that was just one of the best things I've ever done with my life. Playing shows over there was sick. And then, yeah, I could probably keep talking, but I'm not gonna. So, next question.
I enjoy hearing you talk. It's great. I imagine the way the sound would have reverberated off this giant meat fridge would have been awesome, right? Like, yeah. I would like to maybe go back there and time travel when we develop that power. You and me together can probably make that work, right? Yeah, cool. Brooke, any thoughts? Do you reckon we can time travel? Brooke says she already has. We have one question from Brooke's Ask Me Anything, which is, what's your favorite movie? No,
what should I say here? There was a few really tacky ones, like I used to love Inception, not gonna lie. The second Nolan Batman film, Batman Dark Knight Rises, I used to froth that movie so hard. Donnie Darko.
Oh, great movie.
I love that as well. What have I seen recently that's been amazing? I can't even I fully can't even remember. Sweeney Todd, Demon Barber of Fleet Street, that type of thing. I'm just gonna say those 4. That'll do.
I mean, that's definitely more than one movie. Yeah, that ticks all the boxes. Cool. I guess I was trying to ask you about a lot of shows because I'm curious about what your ideal live setup is. Like, if I gave you, let's say you're famous, and not that you would ever want that, but you can have whatever in front of you when you play a show. Is it CDJs? Is it 3 controllers stapled together? Is it a mixture of hardware, software, so on? Like, I know you. Yeah.
Easy answer. Zone 92 mixer, 3 CDJ 2000 Nexuses. Done.
And a USB, right? You probably need to bring one of those. Yeah, cool. Yeah, that's why they pay me the bucks. I don't want to say the big dollars. That's not true. All right, I guess like the one obvious question I want to cover before we maybe do something fun. It's all fun. Is what can we expect in the future from the Administrator Project specifically? Do you have anything interesting coming up that we should be aware of?
Yeah, I suppose now would be a good opportunity to kind of tease that I'll probably be doing an album of my own tunes, probably somewhere in like 12 to 14 to 16 tracks on a printed USB as well. I want to do that for probably the 25th release on CVR, but I might bring that forward just because like we've had a bit of a backlog overseas because European friends and obviously European like record production and record sales have been kind of like stalled and then stopped and then started because of COVID and the sort of shit that they're going through over there. Like they're going through a really, really insanely tough time and only kind of coming out of it now. I might bring that forward just because I've got a lot of unreleased music and I don't actually see it fitting solidly into any category. It's just a bunch of weird, cool tracks that I want to put out. Again, working on that sort of like same digital kind of front. I think doing them on USB is ideal. I don't actually see my music as fitting on the vinyl medium so much. I don't know. I can't really tell you why. That's probably something that's coming up soon. So I've got a lot of unreleased material that we'll probably hear about soonish. Some of which is good, some of which is terrible. You'll hear everything in between. What else have I got coming up? Only one show coming up bar tonight, which is... what's happening tonight? I think I actually have a poster if you wouldn't mind holding that up. Double Hands presents Lost in Sound at... Can we all see that now? Yeah, I think you've been holding it for a really awkward amount of time now. Olympic Pool Maintenance League, who actually remixed one of your tracks on the CVU release, 88756 themselves. Also a Connection Verified and released artist, and myself are playing at, what is it? Bunker at Warehouse 25, 8 p.m. to late tonight, and that's technically my first interstate show officially. I used to play heaps up in Sydney when I was living up there and also running a bunch of really juvenile projects, one of which was called the Dank Dad Discotheque. We had a really weird amount of traction for a name that was that terrible. We literally played at World Bar in King's Cross, which is like a pretty renowned big club as Dank Dads, which was weird. Where was I going with that? What's in the future? Shows? Maybe? One more show, sorry, at INSTASIS at Sub Club, where you're booked actually. Well, 88756, whoever that is booked there. Among other really cool local Melbourne artists and also INSTASIS residents. So that's myself, Duct, Harder, and the new edition of my good friend DJ Glug. We'll be playing some tribal slammers in the side room from 12 till 5. So if you're in Melbourne, come and join in the fun. I'm hoping a few things will kind of like come about from kind of recent interactions. Like I got a few ideas for some park parties coming up. There is potentially another release with the All Sorts guys coming out soon. We're thinking about doing like a really big VA with some local artists coming up, so I could probably tease that as well for anyone that's listening. Yeah, I'm just gonna keep writing music, and whatever happens, happens. You know, that's kind of me. That's what I do. So book me, or else.
If anyone did want to book this mysterious smiley face, how would they best get in touch with you?
Connectionverified@gmail.com. Please and thank you.
I enjoy doing this myself, so I'll put that on the screen here. I actually did that for the last video. I'm very proud of myself.
There's a lot of buttons on here. What's the learning curve like going from, so you said your background was like drums, percussion, from something like that into something like this? I imagine there's not many buttons on a drum.
There are, in fact, none. There are perhaps maybe nuts and bolts and screws and such, but I don't think any of those things are buttons per se. The learning curve initially was steep, hence producing like literally 3, 4, 5 years worth of absolute garbage. I actually found an old folder of all of my garbage tracks in a Dropbox account that I didn't use, so I downloaded all of those with an amazing track titles such as Yar and Rewub and Awake. Really good track names, really good tracks. Yeah, the learning curve for Ableton and electronic music production, especially when you're mostly self-taught, is enormously steep. Mostly because to be an okay producer is easy. To be a great producer is really, really, really hard. There are so many like finishing touches. There's so many tiny little bits of kind of information that you need to have or to know to bring your productions up to a standard that's not just good. It's kind of exceptional. You know, it's above standard. Like first and foremost, just coming up with like new, unique music. I really like hate sort of hearing productions and immediately thinking I've heard this before, even if I hadn't. To me, that just means that someone's not trying hard enough, to be honest, like brutally honest. So like that type of stuff takes a really long time to learn. It's also so like hard to condense all of your influences into one kind of like central song, or even like an EP or even an album. Like I've got like these days I play really sort of like fast, kind of like groovy techno, but I've got everything from like some ambient that I liked, from electro to like, I don't know, electro pop. What else have I got on here? Some like drum and bass. Like summarizing and condensing a lot of those influences is really, really hard in terms of actually putting out something that you're happy with. So the learning curve is steep, but it gets less steep with time and practice and consistency and hard goddamn work. There's about 5% of people that are naturally talented. The other 95% have to work their absolute asses off to get literally anywhere over 10 years, 15 years, however long it is. Yes.
That's a good answer. It reminded us of another very important question we have to ask, that we've asked both the acts so far. When you're making music and stuff like that, what's your file naming like? Are you someone who like organizes your files, like this is Techno track 1, or you know, whatever? Or are you someone like, say, 88756 who just smashes the keyboard or writes big drums question mark, or wiggly, or noise?
88756 and I were actually speaking about this recently. My file organization is quite similarly awful in that I will I called some tracks Graham Cracker and Yar again the other day. What else was there? Idea. You're never gonna. Well, sorry. Most people would never realize what that is, but I just have a very good memory about what each individual thing is. I also, like, after I've finished a track, organize them pretty, like, meticulously in terms of, like, when it was produced, whether it's going on a label, whether it's needing to be mastered, or whether it's just a pre-master. I have a lot of, like, folders and subfolders. File organization in terms of decks is also pretty meticulous as well. Like, I've basically got not just genres but sub-genres, and then sorted into like fast, medium, and slow so that I can fit a mood. I've also got like things like loops and acapellas and that sort of stuff, all aligned and sorted properly so that when I need to find something for a specific purpose, I can just find it basically. But yeah, I do like the smashy keyboard, but you just need to remember what the smashy keyboard was, what sound that was, and then you can get back to it. And then after you finish the track, organize the hell out of it. But that's me. Yeah.
See, that's the difference between you and 88756 is that he does not remember. He smashes the keyboard and then goes, is it this one? No, it's this one. No, it's got to be this one for sure. Yeah, it doesn't quite work out, but that's fine. Good thing he's not here. I can sort of talk shit about him and you won't ever hear it. What are your, I assume, musical influences when it comes to stuff like this? If you could name drop a couple people, feel free.
Hard question to answer. Let's go 90s first, because my sound these days is very influenced by just really, really like fast, heavy 90s techno. People like Umek, Dave the Drummer, Kari Leckerbush. Who else is on here? I'm just going to actually look through my folders real quick because this will be a good way. Archive 1, they're not 90s, but they're pretty heavy and fast. Dave Clark, of course. Can't forget him. That's the 90s stuff. I like a lot of electro, like Carl Finlow, Stefan Vincent. Who else is there? Underground Resistance, all the way through to people these days like ERP and who else? DMX Crew, Micron, lots of electro stuff there that gives me that kind of like warm, glossy sound. Then these days, people like Vil, Jeroen Search. Who else is in this goddamn folder? Adventist, he's from the 90s actually. Max Watts and Decoder, love those guys. Truncate. That'll do.
I knew 0 of those words that you just said.
Every single one of those musical influences you listed, I was like, I know those people. I also do those. I mean, someone I know intimately knows those people. And that bodes very well. I think we're going to get along. Yeah, I'm very excited. If it's all right with you, maybe we can play some tracks for the last hour or so. Yeah.
Most of these tracks are unreleased and mastered in about 5 minutes by myself right before this show. So if they sound terrible, you know why.
I think they sound great. I'm very excited. Let's check. I think we're okay. Normally we're fine. Tell me a bit about this track in particular. This is my favorite track, at least, of one of your very recent releases.
Yeah, this one came out on a Dallas-based label called ESP Collective Extrasensory Perception, run by someone who's really, really coming up in the sort of global scene, Dakota, and also co-run by Max Watts over in the States, in Minnesota, I think. This one, I don't know what it was, but I basically plugged an arpeggiator plug-in into this soft synth that I was using and programmed it to basically be an up and down kind of arpeggiated sort of thing that goes and then basically slap that with some good 99 percussion. Again, it's just fucking around and figuring out how to make whack sounds. But yeah, thank you for the kind words.
What I like most about the sound, I think, is I can never figure out if it's a polyrhythmic thing or not in my head, because it just fights the percussion so nicely. The percussion is so strict, and the synth is you know what? I think I'm actually playing 5/16 or whatever. I can't tell, you know.
Exactly. And I'm not sure either, because I'm pretty sure the arpeggiator is set to 1/12, but with a weird kind of 40% gate on it as well. I don't know. I honestly don't know how I did that, but it happened, so it's good.
sound? What the hell is that? That's one of my favorite sounds I've ever heard.
Pad. Weird pad. Attack with an LFO mapped to the attack, so it kind of goes wah 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 wah. I think the processing on that's actually really quite simple, but it sounds pretty funky, pretty cool.
It actually reminds me a lot of one of Chris's synths in one of his tracks. It basically like, it has so much space because it's so infrequent, and it's like this cool motif that happens throughout the piece. And I don't know, I really, really think more songwriting should be like that. Less in your face, more just like the really cool thing happens a couple of times during the track and you notice it, you know? Like, yep. not all of it, but a lot of what we're listening to now is your own stuff or unreleased stuff. How many do you think pieces of music or outputs have you written since you've started this project, if you had to guess?
Hard to give a number. I've been writing quite a lot recently. Everything you've heard on my side of things has been either released or unreleased from either myself or this track is from a new project I've started called Automates. We just had a release on Bombcast Audio, which is really sick. Just basically modular madness. That's all the project is. Some good percussion, some good grooves, and then just modular craziness, basically. Hard to give a number. Definitely in the hundreds, potentially thousands. Maybe not thousands, actually, but it's a lot. It's a lot. What about you?
Thanks for doing that. That was driving me insane, but I didn't know how to fix it easily and quickly, so this is good. So you mentioned this is basically a side project you and a friend have started. Is that something that you, well, I guess, enjoy a lot, the creative process of making music with someone else? Or has it mostly been an individual thing?
This one's been really awesome because we've both had a bit of time and obviously a lot of energy to write and be really productive together. Davis, who I write with, is a really, really intelligent producer, really smart guy. He knows modular and synthesis, just all the ins and outs, down to his core. And it's just really fun writing with him. I think we have a really good sort of process in terms of how we write tracks. We'll, throw down some sort of stabs or maybe a pad, and just kind of build from there. It's just really fun writing with him, and his expertise combined with my kind of ability to, I suppose, arrange tracks and get stuff kind of out there really easily is a really good combination. So it's been fun with him. It's just been consistency again. It's been trying to write music as much as possible, and just kind of working on what we're doing. Again, shout out to Bombcast Audio for giving this one a run.
seeing you do what you just did, which is essentially just loop a piece of music and be like, yeah, I love that, I'll keep it, I need a third deck now, etc. Brings me so much joy. Like, you have absolutely no idea. It makes me so happy watching this. Very outside there. Love being here. Just having a great time. Is this always the way you've DJed techno? So like spread across many decks, slapping stuff together? Or, yep?
It didn't used to be like that, but it's definitely like that now, and especially when I do, you know, back-to-back to someone like Fergus, for example, we're always on 3 or 4 decks, just like looping, you know, an a cappella, looping some sort of like vocal cut with some percussion, and then like transitioning as you kind of normally would. I love the loop functionality of like good modern CDJs. I love just working with grooves and seeing those grooves all the way through. Basically, yeah, that's how I DJ. Heaps of loops, heaps of little cuts, lots of rhythm, lots of groove, all the time, basically. Yeah.
something that I've like immediately noticed when you play your tracks is they sound pretty good by themselves, but fantastic with other tracks. Like you have a lot of like space, I guess. Is this something that you keep in mind when you're writing them?
Again, like working with 3 decks is always awesome. Just gives so much more room for creativity, I suppose. Like this is one of my tracks, and then layered with the truncate track, but it's basically just a vocal. So you've got. Honestly, a lot of the inspiration for like this style of mixing does come from people like Fergus, but also people back in the 90s, like, I don't know, crazy people like Jeff Mills mixing 3 vinyls. Like, that's just nuts. But the layering is like second to none. I love it.
I personally noticed about your tracks in particular is they have the like interesting chordal pad section right at the end of the track, if that makes sense. Is this something you think about when you write them?
Yeah, definitely. I don't know, I find that the sort of pad and those kind of droning sounds gets a little bit monotonous when it's been over the entire length of the track. I really like kind of sprinkling it on at the end as just like a nice little kind of like finishing taste, just to like get you through to the end. Like brings that little bit of a kind of warmth and emotion up. Like it's just nice to finish off with some like lushness, you know?
It's basically a reward to the listener, right? Like, you know, like nice work, here's something that you like. If you like the previous 3 minutes, you'll love this, you know? Like, yeah. this has just occurred to me, and I promise you it's genuine. I wrote this track when I first heard the Inner City Lamponia track on CVR. Inner Gritty? Yeah. I was like, oh, I can do that. I'll come on with some of it. It's nothing like it, you know? But in my head, like, that was a direct inspiration, essentially. You're essentially my hero. Sorry about that. what you do is one of the coolest things I've ever seen. So this like slight vocal hit that's playing, it's very, very, very reminiscent of like many techno tracks that I think of, like the kind of like subtle hit of humanity, basically. Like, but how have you done this?
So, again, mentioning my good friend Fergus Sweetland, way back when he sent me this enormous folder of like acapellas from like really good stuff like Daft Punk rips through to like trashy as hell like Black Eyed Peas vocals. A lot of them were unusable if I'm being honest, but a few of them you can kind of like this one's from a Fatboy Slim track. And just like literally 4 or 8 bar looping that and layering that over like some other groovy stuff, it just makes it really sound really nice. Really 90s style, really like chop and change, but like, it just sounds cool. It sounds really cool.
I am such a huge advocate for this. Like, this, in my opinion, is more like songwriting on the fly as opposed to mixing. You know, like, I adore this. I'm very happy I'm coming to that. So we added that bit crusher in post. You can tell. Yeah, totally in post. Yep. That's the one. All in post. The editor must hate this. If anyone's curious about those words of wisdom I assume we were spouting, definitely wisdom, you can come talk to us tonight. What's happening tonight, Brooke?
It's funny you should ask. What's happening tonight is nothing at all, actually. It's a very chill night. Heard there's a football on. I'm kidding, that was a joke. Haha. This poster I'm going to hold up right now in front of me. This is Lost in Sound by Double Hands. That's us, we're Double Hands, and we're presenting it. Featuring Olympic Pool Maintenance League, Edit 756, and Administrator. It starts at 8 p.m. tonight in Warehouse 25, which is in Milton. Good luck parking, because there's football games all night. We are fucked. Goes all the way through to 1 a.m. There will be tickets available at the door, I believe, hopefully, as long as if they haven't sold out in the last 5 minutes, which is entirely possible given these fucking bangers. But it's gonna be a vibe, and I hope we see you there.
If you ever wanted to see a giant smiley face in person, now's a chance.
I may or may not be asleep when you come in. If I am asleep, wake me up. If I'm not asleep, just tell me to keep going.
We like this work ethic around here, you know? You do all the work for us. Our work ethic is very poor. Between us, we're fine.
Between us, we have the work ethic of one person.
And in this day and age, that's all you need. Now it feels inappropriate, but I was going to do a you.